daylight, according to police. These are just some of the headlines of gun violence we saw this weekend. Joining us now with reaction and analysis is the National Vice President of the Fraternal Order of Police, Joe Gamaldi. Joe, welcome back to National Report. You know, these shootings that we've seen, and we always tend to report on Monday morning, these happened to come on a weekend when we saw thousands of people participate in a March for Our Lives rallies. Those took place across the country here. Your reaction to the violence that we saw this weekend?
Well, I think the American public's really waking up to violence in America right now. I mean, a recent Gallup poll listed crime as one of the #1 concerns of Americans at a rate we haven't seen in years. A recent Pew Research poll said that the #1 concern for Black Americans is crime, and rightfully so, because last year we had a murder rate that we hadn't seen in over a generation, and in 2022, it's not slowing down. We are seeing murders up 55% in Seattle, 21% in Portland, 36% in New Orleans, 34% in Milwaukee, and in New York City, we are seeing violent crime up over 40%. But you know what's funny? While all of this is going on, we still have woke politicians, activists, and academics out there pushing no consequence criminal justice policies. And they mask it as if they're trying to help our minority communities, when in fact they're doing the exact opposite. Because you know who's disproportionately impacted by violent crime in this country? Black Americans, to the tune of 12 times the homicide rate of everybody else. So maybe, just maybe, if we actually started enforcing the laws that we have on the books right now and throwing the book at people who shoot people or who sell guns illegally or who possess guns when they're a felon, we could actually impact violent crime. Because I'm telling you, the American people are being very clear to politicians about what we want. We want safe streets, we want secure neighborhoods, and if you're not willing to give it to us, your ass is going to be looking for a job come November.
We saw in San Francisco, that district attorney there recalled out of office. Essentially, people were unsatisfied with his performance. And also, we've seen recent increased crime out in San Francisco, including those car break-ins and shoplifting that's taken place across the city. All right, let's talk about nationally a solution here. We've seen Senate lawmakers come together with a framework for this bipartisan gun legislation here. We'll show you what it includes. Increased background checks for those ages 18 to 21, some school safety funding, mental health resources, and then incentives for red flag laws. Again, this is still in the initial stages, but we've heard about 10 Republicans have signed on to this proposal. So they might have the votes to get this passed once the final version comes out. Joe, do you think this could make a difference in the gun violence that we've seen?
Well, you know, we at the FOP, we're willing to talk to anybody and discuss issues of gun violence in this country, and we're willing to look at reasonable solutions that don't impact people's rights to own firearms. But at the same time, right now, we're not enforcing laws that we have on the books. So everybody wants to create new laws, but unless we're actually going to enforce them, they're not going to make a bit of difference. We are continually seeing probation being given to people for felons who are in possession of a firearm, to people who are shooting people, and they're giving probation. We need to make sure that we are seeking the maximum on this. Imagine a world, or imagine our country, where if you shot someone, you did 25 years in federal prison. If you sold a gun illegally, you got a decade in prison. We would actually be able to make an impact, because there are only a small amount of people that are committing violent crimes, but we have decided in this country to go down the path of chaos and just allow them to get arrested over and over again and get out to commit more crimes. It's completely ridiculous, and it's what's driving the violent crime rate that they have in this country.
Let's zero in on New York City here, a city that has very strict gun laws across the country, but we still continue to see violence take place. But now there are questions about, will there be law enforcement who are interested in patrolling the streets because of this increased violence that we've seen? I want to show you this. It's reportedly led to some retirements of NYPD officers. The New York Post compiling this chart together, citing NYPD pensions funds. This year, more than 1,000 cops have retired, 500 resigning, for a total of nearly 1,600. This is an increase from years prior that we've seen. Do you think, Joe, part of the gun violence, this lawlessness, this increased criminal activity has something to do with the retirements that we've seen from NYPD officers?
Well, you've had politicians and denigrating and demonizing law enforcement. You add the increase in violence against us, which last year we had 346 police officers shot in this country, which was a record since we started tracking the data. And 2021 was the deadliest year for law enforcement and intentional homicides in 20 years. So, yeah, it's having an impact. I've been a police officer for 17 years. I've never seen morale as bad as it is right now. And the trend that you're seeing in the NYPD, we're seeing it nationwide. Retirements are up 45%. Resignations are up 20%. And we can't find anybody to take the job. In Chicago, applications are down 83%. In New Jersey, they're down 90%. In Colorado, 70% of the agency says their recruitment is completely in the tank. So our profession is absolutely in a state of crisis. And, I don't think it's hyperbole when I say our profession is dying off. And the only way in order for us to get people through the door is going to be agencies lowering standards, which means we're going to get people who aren't qualified to be police officers. And that's only going to exacerbate the problem of building trust with our community.
Wow. Everyday Americans cannot afford private security like celebrities and politicians can. They need NYPD and police officers across the country to just make sure their communities are safe, to have a presence there. Joe Gamaldi joining us this morning. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.